And hello, everybody. It's so good to see you. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, dreams. I had so much fun putting this together. While I was in the afterlife the first time, when I first went into the light, I started getting all these downloads of information on all kinds of topics. It seemed like it was anything I'd ever had a question about, during Nancy's 43 years of living, I was getting the answers to. And one of them was about dreams, because I was heavily into dream interpretation. I bought books about lucid dreaming and how to interpret dreams. I even read Freud's, pitch on dreams and what they mean. And I tried to use dreams to guide my life, figure out, what are they telling me? And I remember a lot of dreams. I mean, I always have. I kept a dream journal at one point in time. I just thought they were really cool and I should make the most of them. And then I got this download of information about dreams I'm going to share with you, and it kind of blew my mind. I also, as you know, got a huge download of information about humans and what their innate character traits are, and the fact that they are manifested beings, they're just manifestations. And I got this huge amount of information about how they operate and how they're so different from what at that point in time I was thinking of as myself as the soul. So I'm putting that information together with the download about dreams, and that's where I got the presentation from. So I am going to share my screen and get started here. This is a copyrighted video, and my slides are copyrighted. So please don't reproduce them or share them with anybody else. Source's purpose for dreams. And as I mentioned before, I was amazed to find out the source actually has a purpose for dreams. Humans do not dream. I thought they did before I died. I thought, I have a degree in anatomy and physiology, biology, but my major is anatomy and physiology, and I had a second major in chemistry. And so I swallowed whole everything that doctors and medical researchers said about the brain and how it operates. And I always thought the brain produced dreams while the body was asleep. But humans do not dream. Souls do. We parts of source inside these bodies are the ones who produce, direct, and star in our own little nighttime movies that we call dreams. Dreams serve very important spiritual purposes, not human ones. I learned in the afterlife that dreams are not produced by the human brain. In fact, most of what medical science considers to be thinking done by the human brain does not occur in the body at all. It's the souls inside doing the thinking. Source is the only creative force in the universe. Dreams are creative. Only source can dream. So the part of source that's inside each one of these bodies that we inhabit is the dreamer, is the creative force behind the dreams. The brain is essentially doing repair work. That's why humans sleep. The tissues, the organs, they all need downtime, and they need maintenance time, and they need repair time. So while the body's asleep, the brain is running in the background, kind of like how a virus scan on your computer will run in the background while you're doing some other programs. Dreams are our work. We, the souls inside, do our best work at night while the body is asleep. There are 3 spiritual purposes for dreams. One is out-of-body living. 2 is soul, you the soul, to the body you're inhabiting, or you the soul with other souls, usually in the afterlife, or with yourself, the part of you that's still in the afterlife, communicating. And the by far largest, like 99+% of dreams are for the purpose of filing and storing soul memories. We're going to go through all 3 types. First, out-of-body living. You know, we souls manifest the events and the circumstances and the opportunities that our human bodies experience while they're alive. Most of what the body experiences is driven by biology, you know, animal drives, animal instincts, and just biological functions. But the living part, you know, the part that is interesting, is manifested by us souls. And we manifest what we truly and deeply believe about ourselves, about life, and about our place in life, our place in the world and in the universe. We don't stop doing that just because the body's asleep. You know, when the body's asleep, it would be so boring if we just slept too. We don't have to. Souls don't need sleep. So we just continue manifesting human life. And it looks like little movies to us when we become aware of them. But it's really out-of-body living. These are the dreams that seem and feel completely real. And a lot of times they're just completely boring. I used to call them slice of life dreams before I knew it was out-of-body living. And that's what they are. It's just, yeah, there's no plot to it. It's just you seem to be watching yourself in the dream doing something, usually not anything very interesting. And out-of-body living in dreams, you may return to the same settings and people over and over. So like the people in your human family will oftentimes appear in your out-of-body living dreams. And you may also return to the same settings. Like I know I have, I think it's maybe a townhouse apartment that I live in my out-of-body dreaming, or at my out-of-body living dreams. I also have 1 or 2 different offices that are not the offices I actually had as an attorney. And I go back to those same places in those dreams. And before I got this download of knowings about dreams, I thought that these out-of-body living dreams meant that I was leading multiple lives in parallel universes or parallel dimensions. I thought that, you know, the part that I was aware of while Nanci was awake was, you know, me living in one dimension, and then the parts that I was seeing that looked just like life in my dreams was me living in another dimension or a parallel life. I always kind of thought, well, if I make one choice in Nanci's awake life, I could make other choices in you know, dream life. And that way I had all my bases covered. I could never be wrong because I could choose, you know, anything I wanted to in dreams. And so if I was wrong in the waking life decision, I could make up for it in the dreams. Manifested living dreams are kind of for that purpose. They allow us to act out different behaviors or personality traits that we don't actually have, just to see what it's like. So it's like in an out-of-body living dream, in theory, you probably won't do this, but in theory, you could be, you know, a rock and roll star on stage, you know, singing with a band, being the lead singer, you know, getting all the adulation and everything. You can't do that in real life. Usually out of body living dreams aren't that interesting. They're more, like I say, more like slice of, you know, the same kind of life that you're living now. Here's some samples of out of body living dreams that I've had. Nanci hates to shop. Apparently I love to shop. So I shop in my out of body living dreams. I'll walk by various shops and restaurants. Oh no, I'll go clothes shopping in my dreams, and I'll find clothes. I'll be trying them on. I mean, it's just like going to a store and trying on clothes, and they are so real that I can remember many times while I was, you know, working, you know, actively practicing law. When I wake up in the morning, first thing I'd think of was, oh, I'm going to wear that suit I got last night, because I didn't realize it wasn't real. The dream was so real that I thought I was going to find that suit in my closet the next day. I guess maybe last month, I had an out of body living dream where I was walking down it was a pedestrian street. I mean, it was kind of street where there weren't any cars on it. It must have been blocked off on the ends to make it a pedestrian mall. And my sister and I were walking past various shops and restaurants, and we were trying to look for some place to eat. And I kept, you know, looking in places and looking at the people out there and thinking, oh my God, you know, they're not wearing masks. You know, how am I going to be safe? You know, how can we go into a restaurant and be safe when nobody's wearing masks? And so for me, that was a little bit of a nightmare, but you know, that's all we were doing, just walking along, trying to find some place to eat. I mentioned that I often go back to the same townhouse apartment, and it's a townhouse apartment that I've never lived in. It seems to be constructed of bits and pieces of places where I have lived or my mother lived. But I'll have out of body living dreams where I'm putting things away. You know, it's like I just did laundry and I'm folding clothes and putting them away, or I'm moving furniture, and, you know, trying them out in different places, or I'm making the bed. And oftentimes my deceased brother or my mother will appear in the apartment. I can't tell if they're living with me or they're visiting. But those are what I mean by out of body living dreams. They're just like little slices of life. They don't mean anything. You know, that's one of the things I'm going to repeat over and over. And that is, most dreams don't mean anything. And these out of body living dreams aren't clues to what you should do or suggestions for how to change your life or anything. It's just random slices of life that you're manifesting while the body's asleep because you got nothing better to do. The next category of what humans call dreams are actually soul to body communications. These are often nightmares, and this is why we have nightmares. It's us inside these bodies trying to get the body's attention to a problem or something that needs to take care of. Oftentimes, we're trying to warn the body that it has not recognized and taken care of a physical or emotional danger. We may be trying to alert the body that it needs to do something. And these dreams, these soul to body communications, the reason why they're oftentimes nightmares is because we have to do whatever it takes to wake the body up, if it's an alert dream, to get the body's attention and make it pay attention if it's a warning dream. So we may start out with, you know, a little movie that, you know, we think may scare the body, but if it doesn't work, we just get more and more extreme. Warning dreams, the first category of soul to body communications, do need interpretation. The events in the warning dream are not important. The feelings are what is important. So if you have a warning dream, a nightmare, look for something in your awake life or your body's awake life that makes you feel the same way. And we're going to cover some more examples, but I want to tell you about one. The images in the events and in the dream are not important, except to the extent that they'll get your attention. I, at one point in my life, had over and over and over these nightmares where I'm flying along in my little airplane. I actually have a pilot's license. So I'm flying and something goes wrong with the airplane, and things have often gone wrong with my airplane when I was flying. And I'm crashing. The plane is just, zooming right down toward the ground. Right as it's about to hit the ground, either the plane pulls up or it disappears. And I land standing on my feet on the ground. And I had those dreams over and over and over and over. And I couldn't figure out, so my first inclination, of course, was, is the plane I'm flying safe? So I changed planes. I was in 2 flying clubs, so I had kind of a choice of planes. So I changed planes. I still had the dream. I had this plan where I was going to fly to every airport, every county airport in Ohio. And I was following that plan, marking them off on my calendar. I thought, well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe some of these county airports aren't safe. So I stopped flying to different county airports and just started going to the ones where I knew I'd be safe. And I was flying every 7 to 10 days back when I was actively flying. And I still had the dreams. I finally figured out, just by process of elimination, that it was the relationship I was having with another pilot that was crashing. And when I broke up with him, the dream stopped. Oftentimes, these warning dreams are going to be recurring, like my crashing airplane dream. And they'll recur with different endings, because part of the reason for that is if one ending didn't get your attention, maybe another one will. And see, the thing about nightmares is oftentimes the body will wake up because of a nightmare. Because during a nightmare, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, you start sweating, you may get muscle cramps, you may feel hot or cold. So there's some physiological reaction, and that's the goal. We souls are trying to get a physiological reaction that will wake the body up so that it'll remember the dream, even if it's just for a couple minutes, and pay attention to the warning. So people with PTSD oftentimes have recurring nightmares. Or even if you don't have PTSD, you can have recurring nightmares about medical conditions that you have, or surgeries that you've had, or any traumatic experience. And those dreams are trying to, you, the soul, trying to tell your body, you haven't taken care of and resolved whatever it is that's causing you to have these nightmares. You are not taking care of the PTSD symptoms. You're not taking care of the traumatic symptoms. You're not resolving it. Its sole purpose, these warning dreams, is to get your attention. So like with my airplane dreams, the fact that it was an airplane is immaterial. It didn't mean anything. It could have been I was, walking down the street and somebody mugged me, or it could have been, I was sailing and fell overboard, or, could have been a bunch of spiders, coming up on me, because I'm terrified of spiders. It's whatever will scare you enough to make an impression. So don't attach any significance to the actual events or the type of scare that it is. Just the fact that you are trying to get the body's attention. Warning dreams can also include predictions of the future. And these can be true predictions, because we souls know more about what's going on than the body does. So here's a sample soul to body communication that's a prediction. I had a dream that my puppy was at the vet on IV, but the IV had smoke blowing into it and wasn't helping my puppy. The next morning, my puppy actually had severe neck swelling. He had looked fine the night before. Indeed, he did end up on IV at the vet. I racked my brains trying to figure out what the blowing smoke meant in the dream. Later, I realized the vet where I took him, despite many visits, was not really solving his problem. I now believe the blowing smoke was about misleading representations of the choices for my puppy's treatment. So the vet was blowing smoke about what was wrong with the puppy. And this dreamer explained in more detail that another vet had another diagnosis and another treatment plan, and the dreamer figured out that perhaps the first vet was just trying to make money. This same dreamer, who is apparently a dog lover, says, I had a recurring dream of a dog drowning in a large pond on my property. When my dog was 2 years old, he ran ahead of me, and I found him having a seizure in my pond. I was somewhat prepared to react because of the dreams. She'd been having these prediction dreams. I went into the pond, picked him up, tried to empty his lungs, and laid him on his side. He looked completely dead. I didn't know how to do CPR, but I did mouth to snout, and he came back to life. And I never had that dream again. So these dreams are predictions of what's going to happen generally soon in the future, because we souls pick up on information that the body can't. Another type of soul to body communication is an alert, which isn't as strong or as nightmarish as the warning dreams. Alerts are usually about a health concern, an immediate health concern, like your arm's gone to sleep and we souls are trying to wake the bodies up to let the body know, hey, you got to move because you're cutting off circulation to an arm and it's asleep, and you're going to do damage to it if you don't get off of it. But one that I have all the time is an alert that I need to get up and go to the bathroom. I have all these dreams, like particularly when I'm in one or two of those offices that I mentioned before that I return to over and over. And I'll leave my office and go down the hall, and I'm because I've got to go to the bathroom. I walk in the bathroom, and all the stalls are full. So I'll go to another bathroom, and the floor is dirty, and there's toilet paper everywhere, and it's just nasty. So I'll go to another bathroom. Once I finally figured out over years that when I start having I need to go to the bathroom in a dream, that means get yourself up and go to the bathroom. So that's the kind of alert I'm talking about. Alert dreams can also be reminders of tasks that you need to do. Like if you're moving and you dream that you've got to make sure to shut off the utilities, and you may have that dream over and over. And then eventually you'll make a note to yourself and stick it to the door, turn off the utilities, so it's alerts about things that the body needs to do that it's not paying attention to while it's awake. And these alert dreams will also wake the body up. Like I said, they're not usually as frightening as nightmares with the warning dreams, but they'll be along those lines. And the events that take place in the alert dreams don't matter. What matters is waking up, just getting the body's attention. Here's what I think is probably a filing and storage dream, but I think it's also a good example of what an alert dream looks like. I'm in a place where I had worked in real life, which was the personnel department of a major department store. I'm in a nearby storage room. I'm naked and desperately want to cover myself. I know that I have clothes in the cloakroom, which is down a hall and around a corner. The clothes are on the shelf of a coat rack where you would ordinarily put hats, scarves, gloves, and the like. I instinctively close my eyes and picture myself standing in front of the place in the cloakroom where my clothes are, neatly folded at the far end of the coat rack. I open my eyes and I'm there. I am relieved. I'm also surprised, but don't know if that was part of the dream or a reaction after the dream. The reason why I say this might be an alert dream is because it's the kind of dream that we souls would have to wake the body up, to let it know it's cold. See, being naked translates in a soul's way of thinking to being cold. You need to cover yourself. You need to cover yourself because you're cold. And so if you wake up and pull a blanket over, the dream will be gone. There are also soul-to-soul communications, and this can be, like I said, any soul to any soul. It can be communications from souls in the afterlife, or from the part of you that's still in the afterlife. These dreams do have significance. They do mean something. Oftentimes in the soul-to-soul communication dreams, a deceased loved one will appear. But not all dreams where a deceased person is seen are communications from the afterlife. Like I told you, when this townhouse apartment that I live in my out-of-body living dreams, my deceased mother and brother are often there. They don't say anything to me. They're not communicating with me. They're just characters in the play. So not all dreams where a deceased person appears are intended to be a communication from that loved one to you. But my experience and what I was told in the afterlife, and then also the information I've gotten from my deceased parents, is that if a soul is in a stage of afterlife where they can communicate with the part of a loved one that's incarnated. Now you got to keep in mind, when we're incarnated, part of us is still in the afterlife. So our loved ones in the afterlife can talk directly with us. They don't actually talk, it's telepathy, but can, mentally communicate with us in the afterlife, just boom, boom, boom. We're just right there together. And, we have instant communication. There's almost never a need for somebody in the afterlife to communicate with the part of a loved one that's right there beside them, communicate with the part of that loved one that's in the body somewhere. So, but it can happen. But, if you have a loved one who's died, who hasn't communicated with you, it's probably because they're in a stage of afterlife where they can't, or they don't feel a burning need. But when souls in the afterlife do communicate with us, they do it directly while the body's asleep. They don't go through mediums, they don't go through psychics, they don't go through tarot cards, they don't go through anything else. If there's a message, it's going to be delivered directly. So look for dreams, if it's a soul-to-soul communication, look for a dream where you are just talking to a deceased loved one. When you wake up, you'll remember that you were talking with a deceased loved one. You may or may not remember anything that was said. Here's a sample. These are all mine. Sitting on an airplane with my deceased mother, with her explaining to me why I was not going to die during my first breast cancer surgery in 2011, and why I had to continue on with my mission. I was convinced when I got the stage 3 metastatic breast cancer diagnosis in 2011 that I was going to die during surgery, just like I did in 1994. I thought, perfect bookend, die in 94, start my mission, die in 2011, complete it. I'm going home. I was happy about it. I put my affairs in order. I gave away all my stuff. I scared my brother to death, appointing him as my executor of my estate and giving him power of attorney. And, I was ready to go. And then maybe, I don't know, a few nights before the surgery, I'm in this airplane and I'm sitting facing backwards and my mother's sitting facing forward. And she's explaining to me that I'm not going to die and I've still got work to do. I had a very close friend named Sydney. She was in IONS with me. I accompanied her to many of her breast cancer treatment appointments, radiation, chemo, and lymph drainage therapy. And anyway, she was kind of my sounding board. She was a solid person. She had good judgment and good sense. When I first met her, I met her at an IONS meeting. I think that's international organization. I don't know what it is, but it's an organization that's more science-based. And I know there are astronauts in it, and maybe even started it. But anyway, I saw her at this meeting, and I walked up to her and I said, "I know you." She goes, "No, you don't." I said, "Oh yeah, I do." She goes, "I've never met you before in my life." I said, "I know, we've never met before in this life." I said, "I know you from the afterlife." And we were fast friends after that. I was with her when she died. One of her favorite things was to tell me she was right and I was wrong. So one day it was only a few weeks after she had passed, and I was walking outside, taking my usual walk. And all of a sudden, here's Sydney whispering in my ear, "She was right." And I don't remember what she was right about, but that was a soul-to-soul communication. One of my brothers died in 2012 after I had just gone through 33 rounds of radiation. I was in really bad shape, and I really couldn't do much more of anything than just sit in a rocking chair upright and eat soup once in a while. I mean, I was just a mess. And I hadn't done any work, and I hadn't worried about, writing or practicing law. I didn't practice law for probably a year. Because I was incapacitated. And all of a sudden, here's my little brother who's dead talking in my ear. "Check the status of your books." So there's a book called Books in Print. It's every book that's been published that has a barcode, an ISBN barcode on it. And it's published by the company that sells the ISBN numbers. So I'm looking in Books in Print, and sure enough, every one of my books is listed as out of print. I would never have known that if my brother hadn't told me. And the fact that this catalog, which is distributed at every bookstore and every library, and everybody who's interested in knowing what books are in print and are available, my publisher almost went out of business because it wasn't selling any books. People thought they were out of print. Eventually, when I got to feeling better, I had to sue the publisher of Books in Print for mistakenly listing all my books as out of print. And I was able to save the publishing company mostly by buying it, but I would not have been able to act so quickly or decisively if my deceased brother hadn't told me to do that. And he didn't know anything. I mean, I didn't start writing. So, yeah, I'd been writing when he was alive. But he didn't know anything about Books in Print. Humans think dreams mean something. Like I did. Souls look for the meaning of life everywhere because so little survives the amnesia of incarnation. We don't know who we are, we don't know whose sources, we don't know what's going on, we don't know why we're here, we don't know what we're supposed to do. It's maddening. But more importantly, most souls truly, deeply believe they are their bodies, that they are human animals. And human animals are saturated in fear. I mean, they're just completely fearful creatures. And when you see somebody acting brave, keep in the back of your mind, they're scared to death. They've just trained themselves to act brave, to take courageous actions. Humans crave guidance because they need it. They need it to help control fear. They need it to know what to do and where to look and how to know what to do. So souls that believe they are human look for meaning in ways that make sense to humans. And humans love mysterious events like dreams. So it's natural for humans to want to believe that dreams have meaning. Now, the warning dreams and alert dreams do have meaning in the sense that they are warnings or alerts. The actual events in them have zero meaning. The items that we see in dreams have zero meaning. But humans look for patterns. It's part of the survival instinct. With animals, they, in order to have a comfort zone, in order to not feel completely paranoid and over the top anxious all the time, they learn to observe their environment and to see what is normal, what looks normal, so that they can identify something that stands out. So like when a lion's looking around in the jungle and, plant, snout, they recognize there's a danger there. And same with humans, you're walking down a street and everybody looks normal, nobody's behaving differently. A block away, you see somebody reaching into his jacket, pulling out a gun. You're on alert. So that's a break in the pattern. So humans look for patterns and they impose patterns on everything in order to be able to tell when a deviation occurs and then decide whether that deviation is a danger. So dreams seem to fit a pattern for humans and they look for deviations. And one of the deviations is remembering a dream. Most humans think either that they don't dream or that they don't remember any of their dreams. And that's their pattern, and that's fine. And then when all of a sudden they remember a dream, that's a break in the pattern. That's got to be a warning. That's got to be significant. So let's pay attention to that, and then let's dissect that dream and get every ounce of meaning out of it that we can. Humans, the souls inside humans, will invent ways to get guidance if they don't have any presented to them. I mean, things like reading head phrenology, reading the bumps on your head, reading the lines in the palm of your hand, reading the stars, reading tarot cards. I mean, it's an animal craving for security, and it's a soul craving for meaning of life. Oops. I've got a slide missing. I learned in the afterlife that with the exception of the warning and alert dreams, that dreams have no meaning whatsoever. There are no hidden messages in them, no life guidance. The fact that you remember some is not significant. It only means that you were in the process of waking up while the dream was going on. The items that you see have no significance. Like Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. But that's true of everything we see in dreams. 99+% of dreams are what I call soul memory filing and storage. We souls have total recall. We videotape and audio tape every bit of life, along with all the emotions involved, all of our thinking at the time, all of everything. I mean, we just soak up and record everything all the time. And we have total recall of that material when we're outside the body. We have very little recall of it inside the body, but in the afterlife, we've got it all. If we get out of body, even during human life, we've got access to that total recall. It's a huge amount of information. huge. I mean, beyond human comprehension. It's got to be stored. It's got to be categorized and filed and stored. So we souls use dreams to store our memories, and we store it as movies, and we store it based on their little movies' emotional content, not the images within them. So it's like you won't, as a soul, you won't store every wedding you've ever attended in the same little grouping of memories in your soul, mind, and source, basically. You won't store, every working day experience in the working day storage bin in source's memory. You store these videos based upon how they made you feel. And what we're seeing is those little video snippets, when we're doing filing and storage training, we're seeing those little video snippets being slotted in to their proper place. So you may file, if you're working on filing dreams that make you happy, you may file holding a baby, playing with a puppy, watching a sunset, drinking a beautiful Cabernet, making love with your spouse, all those things that are completely different, but you'll store them in the bin for happiness. So the vast majority of dreams are soul memory and storage organization. And let's go back to the happy bin. Seeing a sunset. When you're storing or filing that away and storing it in source's memory, it may bring up all the sunsets you've ever seen before and all the environments you were in at the time you saw the sunset. So you have a little series of video clips: sunset the day you graduated from high school, sunset the night of the prom, sunset on vacation, the first real vacation you had, after you got your first job, last night's sunset. The underlying events have no meaning. The sunsets themselves have no meaning. All you're doing is storing, categorizing them, and filing them away. And the reason why more than 99% of dreams are filing and storage dreams is because it's a lot of material to organize. So here's the type of dream that allows us to replay something that happened, during waking life. And usually every night we file and store what happened during the day. We include in that total recall not just what actually happened, all the things that we imagined could happen, everything we read, everything we saw, everything on TV, everything we heard on the radio. It's all there. Every piece of sensory data, whether we paid any attention to it at all in the body, it's all there, and it's all got to be filed and stored. And one of the ways we do that is to replay it and go, oh, okay, no, I know where to put that. But when we're filing and storing, we have the opportunity to attach a different ending because we thought about different endings. After after something happens, you go back and replay it in your mind and you think, oh, I wish I'd said that, or I wish I'd done that, or I wish so-and-so would have showed up. All those things happen in the filing and storage dreams. You do say that, you do think that somebody does show up. So it's a way to process the day's events in a way that makes sense to the soul, not the body. This is also all these filing and storage streams. This is the material that shows up in the life review after we pass and go into the afterlife. Filing and storage dreams are easily identified by the fact that they jump from one to the other. They're just snippets, boom, 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 boom. Things that, little events that have nothing to do with one another. And they'll jump from one view to another. Like maybe when you first start watching the snippet, you're watching it facing straight on. And then you're up here looking down on it. And then maybe you're over here looking at it. So you'll change perspective. And that's part of the processing, is getting that 360-degree perspective on everything. I mean, we always do that, awake or asleep. We souls do that. These little filing and storage dreams move from one event to the other. Sometimes they're only a few seconds long. Sometimes they're minutes long, but you may string together, 60 minutes or 90 minutes of them. The dreams will jump from one person to another. And these are the dreams that are easily recognized because things morph. You're trying to think of a morphing dream. Well, like my airplane dreams, airplane's on its way to hit the ground and it'll morph into an airplane that's going up from the ground, or it'll disappear and it'll morph into me just landing on my feet on the ground. People can morph too, like I've seen. I dream a lot about movie stars, but I'll be like talking with somebody in a dream, and when I first see them, I think, oh, that looks like so-and-so that I know. And the next thing I know, they've morphed into this movie star. And the next thing I know, they morphed into somebody I saw on the street that day. And if you really remember these filing and storage dreams and write them down, you can oftentimes recognize where that image came from. Okay, here's a sample filing and storage dream. I have a recurrent dream. In the dream, my mom has just died, and I am in her old apartment. The apartment is full of stuff, all her belongings, piles and piles of stuff, some useful, some junk, and I'm working as fast as I can to get rid of all the things because I have to leave. Trying to put piles for donation, piles for garbage, trying to figure out how to sell valuables, etc. Usually the dream shows me as I am doing the categorization work, what items to put on what piles, and that work just never ends. The overall feeling is one of being overwhelmed, like I have so much to do and I'm running out of time. Sometimes the whole building where the apartment is was falling, with or without me inside. Sometimes the building was starting to lean to the side, and as part of the to-do list, I was worried about selling the apartment ASAP before the whole building collapsed and I lost the property. However, after I actually sold the apartment in real life, the location of the dream varies. This situation is something that happened in real life, and I solved everything successfully. So the question the dreamer has is, why? Why does this dream keep recurring? Well, this dream has elements in it that let you know it's a filing and storage dream. One thing, it happened, it's recurrent. Another thing is, it's got the same theme of being overwhelmed from various angles. Overwhelmed because of the amount of material to organize, overwhelmed because the building's about to collapse, overwhelmed because running out of time. So anytime this dreamer in waking life feels overwhelmed, she is likely to pull out this dream from storage because she's going to file and store the current overwhelming snippets of the day memories that are trying to be categorized and filed away, going to file them with the other events of her life that made her feel the same way, overwhelmed. So every time she's overwhelmed, pulls out the filing and storage dream of her mother and taking care of her mother's belongings. And that's a significant one. And it's one that is likely to get the dreamer's attention to the fact that she's feeling overwhelmed. So it's got a little bit of an alert or warning aspect to it. It's also got the morphing in it. Sometimes the building's falling, sometimes it's leaning. The ending morphs from one time that she has it to another time that she has it. So this is clearly a filing and storage dream. Here's another one. I've had the same dream many, many times over many years. In the dream, I have not finished my college degree. I did, in fact, earn a BA in music, but in the dream, I want to finish it. I'm ashamed that I didn't complete the coursework. The dream takes place on my actual university's campus. I know the campus has changed since I was actually there. The dream iterations take many courses of action. Sometimes I'm late for my class, but don't know which class I'm supposed to be in. Sometimes I'm looking for the person who will tell me my scheduled classes for the current semester. Sometimes I'm looking for a particular teacher or the departmental office, and the building is different from what I remember. Sometimes I'm in the parking lot trying to make my way to the right building, but the campus layout has changed and I don't know which is the music building. Sometimes I'm trying to get back to my car. I don't remember where I parked it. Sometimes I'm just trying to get from one part of campus to another, but again, the layout is all different. Hallmark filing and storage dream, because it keeps morphing. You know, what's going on in the dream keeps morphing. Sometimes late for class, sometimes, you know, looking for a car in a parking lot, sometimes, but the theme of the dream is anxiety, being anxious in a familiar setting. So something has happened during the day whenever this dream pops up that reminds the dreamer of this dream. And so in order to file the day's events that are causing anxiety in a familiar setting to be properly categorized and filed away, the dreamer pulls up all the other snippets of life that have made her feel the same way, bundles them all together, stores them in sources of memory. So the campus doesn't mean anything. The fact that she didn't finish her college degree didn't mean anything. The location of the classes, the courses, none of the particulars mean anything. All that is significant about this type of dream is the feeling. And it's being stored away with other dreams that are memory recalls of other events in the dreamer's life that have caused the same feelings. That doesn't mean you have to do something about it. It just means that's the filing system. Here's one of my filing and storage dreams. I dreamed I was in the light with a bunch of light beams. They were long, flowing robes that pulled under their feet. My first thought was, I wonder if they realize they're standing on their ropes, and if they move, they'll fall over. This is classic Danison sense of humor. My deceased mother came from behind me and crossed the area where I was standing. She had on matching patterned shorts and a man shirt type top, like shorty pajamas, and was very young looking. She passed by me and crossed a void over to a rectangular opening where there were other light beams. The opening had a sign hanging down. I cried out and asked her to take me with her, because I thought she was, you know, going home to the afterlife. She turned around and said, "Stay with Patty and Ann." I woke up literally suffocating. My nose was totally congested and I was having a major asthma attack. My heart was racing. The dream scared me. Okay, so this dream has both a warning or an alert, you know, wake up because, you know, you need to take care of this asthma attack. But it's also filing and storage because it's got morphing. One of the things that I thought during this dream, when I saw my mother wearing shorty pajamas, was like, my mother wouldn't be caught dead wearing shorty pajamas. And so when she shows up in the dream dead, wearing shorty pajamas, you know, that's a characteristic of a filing and storage dream. I recognized the rectangular void was the opening on the back of one of those 18-wheeler, you know, cargo trucks I had seen during the day. The sign that was hanging down was a sign I'd seen in the pharmacy during the day. Okay, here's more of my explanation of how I know this is a filing and storage dream. When my mother said, you know, stay with Patty and Ann, her name is Patricia Ann. And just that day, I'd replaced my computer screensaver with a picture of me with my high school friend, Patty. And I looked up an email from my college friend, Anne. So snippets from the day showing up in the dream, that's filing and storage. In the dream, I was standing in an area that had partial walls that didn't seem real. They morphed, fuzzy, in and out. Classic filing and storage. Light beings don't wear clothes, and I know that. So that's a perspective. It's a human perspective that's thrown into this dream. The void, which was actually the back of a 18-wheeler, kept morphing between looking like outer space to an open chasm. And the area where my mother went morphed from the opening to the back of an 18-wheeler truck that I'd seen during the day, to a horizontal and then a vertical rectangle, to a tunnel into the afterlife. So I was throwing all kinds of things into this dream, snippets of things that I had experienced during the day, snippets of things that I know from being in the afterlife. Lucid dreams. I love lucid dreams. I thought I understood what they were until I actually looked up the definition recently. Lucid dreams are just dreams that you become consciously aware of. Why do you become consciously aware of them? Because the body is waking up, and the body sees it, and the body remembers it. And that's why you can control them. You basically turned what was a soul dream into a daydream, and we call that lucid dreaming.